Out of all the titles released for the Master System, there's one that stands above the rest, almost universally regarded as the best Master System game. I'm referring of course to Phantasy Star. Before we go any further, let's check out these music samples. First of all, we'll listen to the US version. And this is the Japanese version with the FM sound chip. As you can hear, we got seriously screwed in the music department. For this reason, we'll be playing a retranslation of the Japanese release, done by SMS Power. As a very early attempt at localizing an RPG, Phantasy Star had dialogue changed or removed, names altered, and so on. So the SMS Power translation is very much superior to the original US version. Phantasy Star has your typical RPG plot. Alicia's brother is killed after opposing Lashiek, the evil tyrant of the land. Alicia vows to defeat Lashiek. Though is it really a good idea for them to have this conversation in the middle of the street with Imperial soldiers standing right there? But hey, let's quickly discuss the game's title. I've sort of read on the internet that some people are a bit confused about the spelling of fantasy, thinking it's some kind of like weird Japanese translation layer or something like that, but that's not really the case. In fact, the PH spelling was quite common before the early 20th century. The word fantasy comes from the Greek phantasia, and there are still words which bear traces of the older spelling, like phantasm or phantasmagoria. The PH spelling is intended to give it sort of like an archaic feel because this is, a fantasy game. So the now standard RPG elements are all here. Level, experience, various stats, item, magic, the village, the shops. All of this looks, well, just like Dragon Quest. You walk around talking to NPCs who give you the hints and clues as to what to do first. Now there is a spaceport nearby, but you can't access it without a pass. You can, however, travel to the next city. Phantasy Star is unusual in that it gives you 3 cities very close by to which you can access from the very start of the game. If you check out the shops in these cities, you'll find some pretty good armors and weapons, but you really can't afford them yet. Now once you venture out beyond the walls protecting the city, you'll encounter the random enemies. The flies in this game are sort of like the equivalent to Dragon Quest slimes. Combat is very much like in Dragon Quest, turn-based. You can use items, magic, or physical attack. Monsters drop a chest with money inside. Though really, how could a fly carry around a big chest like that? Naturally, if you stray more than a few yards outside the gate, you'll encounter some way too powerful enemies. As a rule, the strength of the random monsters can increase dramatically without warning in Phantasy Star. In the beginning, you'll need to fight a battle or two, then quickly head back to the first town to heal, and then repeat until you've gained a couple levels and can buy some actual equipment. One area where Phantasy Star and Dragon Quest part company is the dungeons. Dragon Quest used top-down dungeon, but Phantasy Star goes for the old-school US-style first-person dungeons. But man, the dungeons are where the graphical power of the Master System really shines. Unlike Deep Dungeon or Megami Tensei, moving around in the dungeons looks very smooth. The walls look solid, the lighting is good, there's both ceilings and floors, and everything is sort of faded into the distance in the background. Lots of Famicom games have tried unsuccessfully to create convincing first-person dungeons, but Phantasy Star is the first 8-bit game to do so. So anyway, your next goal is to try to track down your other companions. Clues point you towards another planet, but you'll need to search around for the Road Pass, which is an expensive hidden item sold in this one particular shop. Once you've obtained that, you can get past those pesky guards and make your way to the spaceport, and eventually hop onto the spaceship. There are 3 planets in the solar system, and they function sort of like the continents in Dragon Quest II. Naturally, you won't be able to access the entire game world right away, and eventually you'll need to get your own spaceship so you can access the last planet. You don't really control the spaceship, it simply shuttles you back and forth between the few different cities. So it's almost kind of like a warp portal, more than like the boat in Dragon Quest II, which you can actually steer around. Now, among Phantasy Star's strengths is its great art style. The character portraits are beautiful, and the dialogue between the characters are reasonably naturalistic. It's not, Legend of Zelda speak. By 1987, characters in video games have become much more talkative, especially RPGs. You get big walls of text in these games. Sadly, in this game, characterization is pretty limited. Virtually the only time your characters speak, or like here, when a new party member is introduced. After this, everyone is pretty much never heard from again. This strange silence from your characters leads to some odd moments. Oh, by the way, here, for example, I found Tylon. He's the second party member. He's sort of a typical tough guy with a flat top, but oddly enough, his hit points and strength are actually less than Meow, the talking cat. Now, I mentioned how the lack of dialogue has some strange moments. Here, for example, you have this rather shocking and horrifying occurrence, yet no one has any reaction whatsoever to Meow being killed, and it really has no consequences at all. Obviously, this is not exactly, Final Fantasy VII when someone gets killed. Much like Dragon Quest I, the final dungeon is quite close to the starting point, and you can go there first thing, but you have no way of opening this damn door until you get Lutz and then level up quite a lot. Phantasy Star takes a page from Ultima 3, and I suppose also Hoshi no Mirohito, by having 4 characters, not just 3. Other than the great graphics, there's a lot of things to like about this game. It demonstrates an almost satirical sense of humor at times, such as this fellow selling cakes from inside a dungeon. The goal of many of the dungeons is simply a quest item or a merely helpful item. Here the cake is required to visit the governor, who provides you with a letter with which to convince Lutz to join your party. In a nice touch, we have here what might be the first fake battle in which you automatically lose in a Japanese RPG. This nightmare appears and slaughters your party, but it turns out was all just a dream. Or was it? There's quite a bit of variety in the overworld. Some villages are high